Hello, everyone. It's Daniel and Robert of The Last Nighters, lastnighters.com, and we are going to talk about the Jerry Seinfeld movie, Bee Movie, and this will be episode 19 of the show, so you can find the show notes and more at lastnighters.com/19. But before we get into the Google description, let's say hello to Robert. How you doing, sir?
Well, let's say hello to me. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you. We're going to be talking about the old Bee Movie, the old Jerry Seinfeld, one and only animated movie. I don't think he ever went on to do much of anything else in the old animated movie department.
Yeah, what is the deal with that?
This one's got all kinds of fun themes that we can break down, so this should be a good one.
I agree. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff. We had intended to do this one last fall with a friend of ours who was a big fan of it, but I think we're going to have him on for one of our discussion programs, perhaps about Incredibles, which will be an upcoming show because that movie's coming out soon. Oh, and I might as well mention now that the episode after this is going to be Deadpool, the original Deadpool, because Deadpool 2 is about to be out in the theater. So mark your calendars, everyone. Next week, Deadpool.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Check it out.
All right, Google description, Bee Movie, 2007 adventure comedy animated film, 1 hour, 35 minutes, 6.1 on IMDb, 51% Rotten Tomatoes, and 80% of Google users like it, which is, this is kind of a, middle of the road type rating. It's kind of odd. But here's the description. Fresh out of college, Barry the Bee, played by Jerry Seinfeld, finds the prospect of working with honey uninspiring. He flies outside the hive for the first time and talks to a human, played by Renee Zellweger. And I'm saying that like they say it in Chappelle Show, because it's funny. Breaking a cardinal rule of his species, Barry learns that humans have been stealing and eating honey for centuries, and he realizes that his true calling is to obtain justice for his kind by suing humanity for theft. Came out October 28, 2007. Directors are Steve Hickner and Simon J. Smith. Featured song is Here Comes the Sun, and the budget was $150 million. It has Jerry Seinfeld, Renee Zellweger, and also Simba, right? He's in this, Matthew Broderick, though he's not listed on here.
Is he? Yeah, I suppose that was his voice there.
Yeah, it took me a little while to place the voice, and then it dawned on me, oh yeah, it's Matthew Broderick, I think.
Yeah, the
Anyhow.
old, voicing animated movie has got to be a good gig. I mean, you go in for like maybe a day or two, you say some lines, you collect a big old fat paycheck, and you walk out. It's got to be good times to be an actor.
Yeah, it's like doing a podcast.
yeah, except you get paid.
Except the paycheck. All right. So what do you think of the description and that information so far?
Well, I would have described the movie differently, of course. I would have said that, a pack of bee commies all of a sudden discover property rights and discover that maybe we've been getting our bee honey stolen from us this whole time by these evil exploiting humans. So they're gonna sue them in human court and somehow win, which is like it's a movie. But there's all kinds of fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of stuff. And before we even get into the movie, I just wanted to talk about bees in general. Do you have any background or understanding of why bees create honey to begin with? Because they seem to make excess of it, right? Because humans can harvest it, and it doesn't seem to kill off the bees, though cell phone waves apparently were alleged to kill bees, and that ended up being wrong, just like killer bees were European and African bees mating together, and they were supposed to come up from Mexico and kill everyone, and that didn't happen. So there's all these like wrong things about bees, but what do you have on bees? What can you tell me?
All that I can tell you, Daniel, is based on these old, like nature documentaries that used to play in like the 80s. I think they were probably made in the 70s or the 60s. But they kind of had that after-school special, not after-school special, but after-school special kind of quality to them. But they're the sort of video that you would have watched in school where the teacher would bust out the old projector and you'd sit there and you'd watch it for like 40 minutes. And it would be, this is about bees. They were made in like the 50s or the 60s, and they're terrible. But, so if those are true, I believe, oh man, even I'm doing it, that the bees, make a bunch of honey, but that honey serves as a storage for when the times get tough. And so when the humans come along and they kind of like set things up right for the bees, that they're just able to just produce and produce and produce. But in, normal nature times, that the honey is just more of there are forest fires, and then the whole hive could be lost, and there are times when it's winter time and you got to survive off that honey the whole winter. All kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's very nutrient rich, not nutrient rich necessarily, but it's really carbohydrate rich, and really could allow the entire hive to survive for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I've heard that honey will last like hundreds or even thousands of years. Like they found honey in the Egyptian tombs and like, oh, it's still good. Meanwhile, present day, we buy honey and like 2 months later, it's crystallized like a rock. You can't get it out of the frickin' bear.
Well, I think that's somebody, putting something in there, maybe absorbic acid or I don't even know what. Don't listen to me on that. But I can't imagine what's going on there. But yeah, honey is I think it's the one thing that doesn't go bad. One natural food that doesn't go bad. Pretty crazy. So great store for calories for a hive that gets hungry,
Yeah, and this is all nectar from the flowers, right? And the pollen is just a byproduct of the bees moving about, right?
As far as I understand it, it naturally attaches to them, and then they just go from flower to flower because they're looking for pollen, not because they have some specific purpose and they're like super smart about things and know that they need to go and pollinize this and that. But of course, in the movie, that's
in the movie, they're like, oh yeah, we dash a little pollen over there, a little over here.
Right, because they know about stuff.
Well, I got to tell you, though, in our neck of the woods here, the last couple of weeks have been pollen insane. Pollen insanity. It's like going to a rave and they, like, let the bubbles come down and get all over the audience or the people dancing. Like, we had a cake layer dusting of pollen on everything. Like, no bees required. There was pollen literally everywhere.
So you're saying we don't need the bees? Is that what you're saying?
Fuck the bees. At least in my local neighborhood, it didn't seem to matter. But that was the most pollen I'd ever seen, ever, and I'm an old man now, so I think it was just a happenstance of like the number of sunny days that we got early in the spring season that just bloosh, pollen everywhere.
Well, I think it's weird, and I'm probably showing my ignorance here, but that's fine. Who cares? That human beings still have, there are still lethal bee allergies. Like I know somebody who blows up like a balloon when they get stung by a bee, and they have to go to the hospital, and it's just weird that human beings have existed with bees the entire time that humans have existed, and you would think that that sort of thing would have been bred out of us by now. But apparently you can still die from getting stung by a dumb bee.
Yeah, not me, though. Man, I've been in some bee fights, and
have you?
I got stung the fuck up, and I'm still alive. And these were very foolish things that I did. We were living on an island at that time, and there were bees, well, not bees, but like those yellow jacket types, living in a hole in the ground, and I was out mowing the lawn, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to like set the mower over the bee hole.
Oh, geez, Daniel.
And just, like wreck them. And they got pissed.
You would think.
Got up in my shirt and stung the crap out of me. And it was a really, really stupid idea.
Yeah, that was a dumb idea. I would think that maybe like water, maybe like the hose and drown them, or...
Oh, I've tried that too, and that just makes them mad too. Though they can't, most of them can't fly if they're super wet, which is exhibited in the film as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, I'm experienced in the bee wars, right?
So you are anti-bee. Is that what you're saying? Your anti-bee stance has clouded you on this movie. Is that what you're saying? I'm like, all right, I don't want you digging a hole in my yard and colonizing, and I don't want you putting a nest up in the eaves. I don't want you dropping no eaves. So you're claiming property rights against the bees.
Yes, and I'm going to take them to court, in human court. Yeah, which, in the movie, why did they take it to human court? They had, like, the venue is very important in the outcome of the case, right? You would think that the bees would be like, no, we want this in fucking bee court. Yeah,
they would want to change a venue, I would think. But, it's a dumb movie, so what are you going to do?
All right. And one other question I wanted to ask you, and this is also related to the debate I had with the syndicalist that I had recently. Do you believe, and we've talked about this, that ostracism is an effective punishment, deterrent, consequence of undesirable behavior in a social fabric?
Absolutely. Human beings are social organisms, and along with reputation hits and people not wanting to do business or be friends with or be around, or those are all social costs. And when you pay social costs and social prices, have you ever been lonely in your life? Have you ever not had anybody, reject you? It hurts. I don't know if you've ever been rejected, but it doesn't feel good. And the people that love and care about you turn their backs on you. Oh, painful. So, you right your ship real quick when that kind of stuff happens.
Right. Okay.
Or go ahead.
So it's a punishment, and it's sort of similar to a violence, right? I mean, it's not like an aggressive violence, but it's at least something that the very imposition of is undesirable to the person who's on the receiving end of it, right?
It is a voluntary means of punishment, yes.
All right. So
people withdrawing from you, you don't have a right to somebody's company. So it's not like they're attacking you physically.
Right.
They're simply withdrawing from you and judging you, or saying that I don't want to be around you or support what you're doing.
Right. And
like when somebody cuts you off, because you're a drug addict, and they're like, we love you, but we're not going to support this lifestyle anymore. We're not going to enable you, so we're going to stop paying your rent or whatever. Anyway,
yeah, and then you go and shoot Jackie.
What?
Find me guilty, because he was cutting off his cousin, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Callbacks.
Good callback, Daniel. Excellent.
All right, so here's my question. Given that ostracism is an effective punishment, and punishment is something that is imposed upon somebody, voluntarily, but it is an effective means of consequence, could you consider ostracism bullying?
No, of course not. Bullying, if you're asking me, and you are, bullying, in my view, is a physical assault where you're actually saying, you're threatening somebody. It's coercion. Give me your lunch money or else I'm going to punch you or something like that. I don't even think name-calling is bullying, though. But I know a lot of people who do, who, a lot on the kind of the lefty side of things think that any kind of negative thing you say to somebody is bullying or mean or attack. You see it on Twitter all the time. Oh, you got attacked on Twitter. No, you didn't. Somebody disagreed with you. That's not an attack. Somebody said that, they didn't like what you were doing. That's not an attack. That really isn't. Or because if it is, then let's say some bully is punching some guy in the face, and I come along and say, what you're doing is wrong. And then the bully gets to say, I feel attacked by your words. It's just ridiculous. It runs into absurdity.
It wouldn't surprise me in the UK.
Well, sure. Or Canada.
Yeah.
Soon, United States, if not already.
Because, there have been instances of people defending their homes and then getting sued or arrested because the perpetrator breaking into their home got injured in the process of breaking into the home.
You better believe it. It happens all the time. Not all the time, but yeah, when it does happen, it seems to always turn out in the invader's favor.
Yeah, very strange. Well, anyway, unrelated, well, sort of related to the bullying thing, but there's a College Humor video that's quite funny where they're talking about how everyone's like super snowflakey sensitive these days, and that we need bullies to step back up to the plate and like resume their role of keeping people in line and toughening them up. It's pretty hilarious. So I'm going to post that in our show notes page, which can be found at lastnighters.com/19. But let's get into the movie, shall we?
Okay, let's do it. Shall we?
All right. So another couple of people I wanted to mention are in this movie. Putty from Seinfeld, Patrick Warburton, of course, and John Goodman. He plays the Southern lawyer who sounds a lot like who's the big chicken in like the Warner Brothers cartoons?
Foghorn, P. Leghorn, or whatever?
Yeah, that's him.
Foghorn,
yeah.
Leghorn? Mm-hmm.
All right. So talking about this movie, we're talking about human court versus bee court. And I agree. I think the venue would be very important, and that if they wanted a better chance to win, they would have gone to bee court. But this leads to the whole question of, do animals have rights? Because early in the film, it's against bee law to talk to humans. So humans have no idea that the bees are aware of their, reason and can converse and communicate and all of these things. So I think that prior to that revelation, that the animals don't necessarily have any rights other than, it would be wrong to abuse them or harm them unnecessarily.
Okay, so do you think then, you're going off the line that bees don't have rights because they haven't established their sentience, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of going
there.
I've sort of thought this through, but not like, super strongly.
That's fine. That's what we're here for. We're going to just try and hash this out, and who knows if we'll come up with an answer or not. So when the humans essentially take a queen and they put them in a hive, and she gives birth to a whole bunch of little babies, and the human is kind of raising up these, you see it in the movie, these farms, they're white boxes with all these people, and then they come along and they smoke them, and then they take the honey. Is that some sort of aggression against the bees? Because, I don't know, I guess I'm just not an apiist. What are they called? Apiist? People that know about bees. Anyway, once you have a queen in one hive, can she leave? Or does she cannot fly because she's too big or something? I think she can leave, right? She can still fly and just peace out.
Yeah, I don't know, but I imagine that if they could and they stay, then they prefer it. They're cozy. They're, they dig it. The accommodations are satisfactory.
Yeah, it seems like there's some sort of a beneficial relationship between the two, sort of a symbiotic relationship where the humans provide the locations, they keep the bears away, they whatever, They feed them. I don't know if they feed them, but they might provide, flowers in the neighboring areas. Who knows? But let's say that they do, then this is a voluntary situation that's going on here. But yet you've got the commie Seinfeld character who says that this is exploitation and that the humans taking the bee honey is theft. Now, before they've established their sentience, A, are you on board with it being theft or a symbiotic relationship? And then after they've just developed their sentience or established the sentience, are you still in the same camp?
Pre-sentience, I think they're just harvesting the bounty of nature. They're homesteading. They're cultivating, basically farming, right? And what is the deal with the caricature of the beekeepers as evil, profit-hungry exploiters with multiple gun references?
Yeah, that was hilarious. It was such a cartoon. And, of course, yes, it's a cartoon. But you're talking about these guys who are just doing their job. They're just like, $15 an hour guys that are going to go out and collect bee honey. But yet there are these mustache-twirling villain types who are just like, I love my job, exploiting these bees. It was so bad. What is the deal? Yeah, real bad. Horrific capitalist exploitation. You know how it is when you're just working your job, trying to make a living.
Yeah, and then after they establish their sentience and they say, no, don't steal our honey, then I think the argument gets a little bit muddier, right? Now, in the court case, he says, do you speak for all the bees? And he says, yes, I am representing all the bees in the whole world. And there's no possible way that he would be able to do that.
Immediately impossible. You didn't get everybody's voluntary acceptance. Nobody all voted unanimously to appoint you the official bee voicer guy. Representative dude. But he claims it, so whatever. And it's accepted for some reason, much like the United States and much like human beings, except that somehow politicians have the right to speak for everybody when it's patently ridiculous to even have one person fully speak for another person.
Yeah, there's no true representation. I mean, if somebody were truly representing you, then they would carry out your wishes, and you would have the ability to tell them not to, I mean, that's what a representative truly is. It gets conflated with the political process, but it's not a true definition, because in the political process they will do things against your wishes while at the same time, quote unquote, representing you.
Indeed. And you could have people representing you in different areas with your express consent, like you have a lawyer that is meant to carry out your wishes in this one specific area to this very limited capacity. But a politician claims to be able to speak for everybody in everybody's interests at all times, which is just hilariously, patently false on its face. So yeah, representation, stupid. But in this movie, it's given a pass, just like in real life. So there you go.
Now, I think that after they establish their sentience, I think that there would be an opportunity for people to come to agreements with the bees and say, okay, if you would like to produce excess honey and have these accommodations and be protected from nature and bears and other things, you're welcome to. And if not, go off into the wilderness and establish a colony wherever you want. It's sort of like the for all the ANCOMs out there, like, all right, if you want to go do communism, go do it over there. Just don't force it on me.
Right. And the whole movie makes me wonder why there wasn't a law to not talk to the humans in the first place, and if there are similar laws among other insects and animals and that sort of things, and why those would exist. Is it really, do they all foresee bad things happening when people could communicate, when creatures and people could communicate? Like Dr. Dolittle is just the worst person ever because he could talk to all the creatures. Like, no, we don't want that to happen. We don't want communication to happen. We want misunderstandings and injustices to occur. That's what we want. It's just silly. But I guess you had to come up with some excuse as to why the bees had never talked to humans in the past, and that it's only when Jerry Seinfeld's individualistic character breaks out of the commune to pursue his own selfish individual wants that the whole movie starts kicking off.
Yeah, because he wants more than just whatever's on that commie job placement board.
Right. Yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about how communism is stupid and terrible. But in the movie, bees have 100% employment, and there are politicians in this world. I don't mean to spoil alert anything for anybody, but there are politicians who claim that any unemployment whatsoever is terrible and wrong and immoral. And that means that you are forced to work. This is like strict labor camp type policies. That's the only way to ensure 100% employment is to force everybody under threat of death to labor somehow, some way.
Meanwhile, raising the price of that labor.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
artificially, so that the demand is actually lower.
Right, because there would be a glut of employment. But anyway, so then in the hive, you got 100% employment, which means you're going to have, no bee has to be the best to get the job. There's no, bee interviewing for a job. There's no training to be a job, although there's school for some reason. But then you just get placed into certain jobs, right? You kind of
Well, there's certain jobs that you have to be bred for, like the pollen jocks.
Okay.
And if you recall, they pretended to be pollen jocks, and the ladies were loving them because they were, they had pollen on them, and it was like a man in uniform kind of thing. They were trying to impress the ladies, and Simba the bootlicker was like, oh yeah, we'd try to alert the authorities.
So military worship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good times.
But when Jerry Seinfeld's saying, hey, I don't want to do what you guys want me to do, because his dad wanted to be a stir or whatever, but Barry the Bee, Jerry Seinfeld wants more, right? He wants to be individualistic, like you were saying. His parents say to him, you're not funny. And I thought that was kind of a nice little subtle dig at him because he's a comedian.
Indeed. Yeah, that's cute. So...
and before you go on... when his parents were telling him that and they said he wasn't funny, they started bickering, and he said, you're not even listening to me. I could say things like, I'll go get a gold tooth and start calling everybody dog, which I think would be mildly offensive these days. This was about 10 years ago. But do you think that statement being made in a movie today might be a bit of a problem?
Probably. Probably be, quote, problematic with the snowflakes of the millennial generation, most likely. But anybody else would be like, yeah, we lived through that. Who cares? It's fine. But, yeah. Probably. But people get upset about the stupidest things these days. All you got to do is pay attention to the news, and there's some stupid thing being upset about another stupid thing, some normal thing. If some of these millennial snowflakes that came out of the colleges these days were to watch old movies, they would just be horrified at just how racist their parents and grandparents were, or whatever, or sexist and misogynist or homophobic or whatever, and just how backwards it all was. Oh my goodness.
I think there's a YouTube video where they have millennials watching old whatevers, old movies, old TV shows, old commercials, or giving them some object like an old rotary phone or a 8-track player, and they're like, "What is this? What do you think of that?"
Yeah,
I've seen a few of those. They're kind of funny.
They can be amusing. So let's talk about what Jerry tries to do, because he sees he sees an injustice, right? He thinks that there's theft going on and this kind of oppression, even though it certainly appears to be a voluntary situation. On the one time, he claims that the smoke is what the bees are addicted to, like a drug, but we all know that all the smoke does is just kind of make the bees more docile. I don't think it's like an addictive thing for the bees, and smoke is a naturally occurring thing. Anyway, so he wants to free the bees from this tyranny of labor, right, of having a job, essentially, because his goal is to not have to toil all day and just until he dies, right? That's his main goal, freedom from having a job, essentially. But and he sees that a real injustice is going on, this theft, and so he goes about to try and stop this theft. But then when the bees win in court, inexplicably, by the way, then they have this massive glut of honey and then no reason to continue working and no purpose. And he realizes that the purposes of these bees was to do a thing. And that now that thing has been taken away, they become these kind of trust fund babies, like these kind of lazy layabout loafers that don't really do anything, have no purpose, and are completely unhappy and depressed. So then, of course, he goes to reverse all that. But not necessarily because of that, but it was because his girlfriend was mad at him, because, all the flowers are dying for some reason, because the bees aren't pollinating them. Although, as you have demonstrated, the flowers can pollinate themselves just fine, thank you very much, sometimes.
Well, maybe in that isolated incident, but...
Well, I don't think that, obviously the timeline is shortened for movie's sake, because you just see the flowers just instantly wilting and dying, which is clearly not the case. But I guess it's metaphorical for over time, without pollination, there would be fewer and fewer flowers, because I imagine that the wind pollinates some of it, but maybe the bees assist. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if it's 50% bees and 50% wind, but I imagine it's not 100% bees. But in this movie, it is 100% bees, and so it's all on the bees to continue working. So then I don't know, is any of this Do you have points to make about any of this?
Yeah, a little bit. It sounds like what you're saying is that early on in the movie, they start off being fairly communistic, very communal, assigning jobs and working just for the collective, for the hive. And there was a moment where he talked about the queen moved there, so they had no choice. So they have to follow the queen no matter what. Like they have no volition in the matter. And he also, by the way, mentions that the queen is elected, which I thought was interesting. That was sort of not how monarchies work, but maybe. But then towards the end, it's almost like they instituted a basic income guarantee. Like no one has a purpose to do work anymore, so they just become shiftless layabouts, and things turn to shit. It reminds me of this Onion article about the microcosm of Marxism being debunked in an apartment because no one wants to do anything.
Sure, the dishes don't get done, doesn't get picked up, nothing happens. It's really good. Exactly.
And, we had an example of that. Personally, our neighbors across the way, they had a little communal garden going for a while, and it lasted, a season and a half, but then people started realizing that, well, these couple of people are working really hard, and these people aren't doing shit, and yet everyone can get as much out of it as they want. So it ended up not working out so well.
Shocking. I'm shocked and appalled.
I know, it's insane. And then you had talked about when we were talking about the 100% unemployment or 100% employment, and that they would have to force people to work. I mean, all you have to do is strip capital, strip efficiency and technology, and then everyone is forced to work. It's like how Cambodia got everyone to be employed. It also helps that you kill half of the population, right? But this is often a charge against capitalism. And it's the, nature's oppressing me argument. Well, capitalism means that I have to work in order to survive, and that's inherently violent.
Yeah, it's real dumb. But then, like the cartoon you sent me recently, illustrates perfectly. You go out into nature, and oh no, nature is oppressing me. And it's a lot worse than your $15 an hour or whatever you would be getting paid at some job, because you have to work and toil all day long to basically scrounge up enough food and build a little shelter. I mean, just watch Castaway. I mean, at no point in that movie was Tom Hanks like wealthy and could sit around and like had a whole bunch of leisure time. And once he got good at things, he was fine, but he wasn't getting fat. If anything, he leaned down because he was losing, his caloric intake was going down.
Yeah, he needed to have a little hive, I think. That would have helped.
Yeah, probably a hive would have helped out. Pollinate some of that stuff. Get some honey.
All right, so let's talk about Goodman and his point in the court case, because he says, there's the bounty of nature, and how else could people do anything if they can't interact with nature and the natural resources and cultivate and change things, homestead them, basically, and create something out of what nature has offered. And I think that he's absolutely right with that. But then he poisons the well with the steroids comment, of course. But
he's absolutely right.
Yeah, and Seinfeld's playing up the exploitation of the little guy, and he uses that language exactly. And then he also correlates it with slavery. Well, you're beekeepers, you're not bee freers.
Right.
And then what's the next thing I have? Ray Liotta comes in, and Sting comes in, and the Sting one was like, well, are you a member of the police? And he's like, well, it's a band that I'm in. Well, are you a police officer? Well, no. Are you a bee? Then why are you using the word Sting? Like it's an appropriation of bee culture?
Yep. Which it sounds like something that would happen today.
Yeah, it's like all the millennials saw these movies as kids, saw movies like this, and they're like, oh, that's exactly right. I'm offended.
I'm offended by him appropriating bee culture. Yeah, it's real bad. But then, Sting actually gets arrested, right?
Yeah, and outed for his real name, whatever it was, David whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He got, what do they call that, doxxed in court.
Right.
As a result of that. But, yeah, it's interesting because, like, the arc is, Jerry is fairly communistic going into this, and then once he gets his way, wins the thing, and he sees the results of it, then he turns into the entrepreneur, and he's like, hey, we need to have a purpose. We need to have a symbiotic market-based relationship where we're providing a service and they're providing something for us, and we make an exchange, and everyone benefits. So in that respect, I'm actually thinking the movie is, as many problems as we're pointing out so far, by the end, it actually gets a fairly decent message.
I would agree. It doesn't go into detail about how exactly it all works out, like what exactly do the bees get paid in, or how do they get paid, or what do they benefit from. I mean, it seems like they were already getting benefits, like what we talked about in the beginning, with the symbiotic nature of the program. But they just kind of make the claim that, okay, now it's a beneficial relationship, and I'm all for it. If everybody's happy and it's all voluntary and whatever the specifics are, go for it. So yeah, I wish they kind of would have gotten a little more into detail about it, but whatever. They're just trying to wrap things up, and they probably didn't even know what the details would be. So whatever, as long as everybody's happy.
Yeah, just a 90-minute cartoon thing. I want to talk about David Puddy a little bit. I have two comments about him and a question for you. The first comment is he's playing tennis with his girlfriend at the tennis court, and Jerry thinks it's a flower or something. He goes down there, and then he gets on the ball and nearly gets killed. And then he miraculously ends up getting rain and whatever, and crashing into the apartment across town. So 1 in a million chance, right? Or 1 in 8 million chance, because there's 8 million people who live there. Those happen to be the same people that he was playing tennis with. I don't know. It was just a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
A little bit too.
Too coincidental? Yeah,
too
probably.
Coincidental.
Probably Daniel. Yeah.
But introducing the characters and whatnot. But in that, Puddy's got a little fold-out brochure of his resume and how great he is and his favorite movies. And he says he doesn't go for those Star Wars movies. And that reminded me of Murray Rothbard. He wrote a very critical review of Star Wars. He didn't like it. And that was under I think his moniker was Mr. Last Night, or Mr. First Nighter. That's right. And we're the Last Nighters. That's kind of why we have the name, everyone. Ta-da! Reveal. But once Jerry Seinfeld steals his girlfriend, Renee Zellweger, and David Puddy tries to kill him in the bathroom, fully aware that he's a conscious being, that's attempted murder, yeah?
In my world, absolutely. Yeah, if you know that something is sentient and can talk to you and you can reason with a thing and have a conversation and understand that it's a thinking, self-owning thing, then yeah, absolutely. You're killing that thing. You're violating that thing's self-ownership, whatever form or shape it is. I know we've had discussions about, can you kill a robot? Can you rape a robot? Those are interesting discussions to have if a robot's ever attains full sentience. But, you're suspending your disbelief and allowing this bee to have full sentience and to be as funny as Jerry Seinfeld. So whatever. Yeah, you're absolutely committing murder, I would think, and you'd probably get prosecuted in some sort of bee court, I would think. I don't know. But I don't think a human court would look askance at you. They'd be like, whatever, are you kidding? I just swatted a bee 2 days ago. Whatever. I don't know. It changes the whole dynamic. If we were to find out that bees could talk tomorrow, it would be like aliens have landed on the planet. It would change everything. I'm sure people would still want to, go along with the way things were, but then there would be a whole bunch more people who would be like bee advocates and, protest and, argue for bee rights and all that sort of thing. It would be a massive game changer. And I think that in my camp, like I said before, if we don't respect other being sentient, then why would they respect ours? So that's my stance.
Yeah, it reminds me of that old TV show, and old, I mean 20, 25 years ago, Alien Nation. Do you remember that one at all?
Sure. Yeah, they're two cops, fighting crime, but one's an alien, got a big red egghead. Yeah,
and everyone was treating them as second-class types. I think it was a commentary on slavery and Jim Crow and things like that, different classes of people and being treated differently.
Yeah. We used to not believe that black people were full human beings.
And not we, just the royal.
No, you and me, Daniel, be honest.
Oh.
But that was yesterday. I'm enlightened now. Now I think they're 4/5 of a human being. It's fine. Anyway, let's talk about how this beehive is a nice little allegory for Venezuela. Because Venezuela is essentially a big old socialist commune nightmare hellhole.
Well, I keep hearing it's not real socialism, but my counter to that would be, well, it's almost socialism, and look how bad it is.
Right. If almost socialism is making it this bad, I'm glad it's not full socialism. But so what happened in Venezuela, and this is just a short little quick rundown, I'm sure everybody that listens to this show is fully aware of it, but whatever, I like to talk, is that Hugo Chavez and his cronies essentially started stealing private property. They call it nationalizing industry. It's just another word for theft. And so, oil companies down in Texaco, like Texaco and Shell and BP and whatnot, they had company, situations down there because they have the largest untapped natural oil reserves in the world that we know about. And so Chavez nationalized all that crap and said, this is now for the people. When have we heard that nightmare statement before? So we're going to take all this, steal all this property, and we're going to have government bureaucrats run it. Not for profit. Because when has that ever turned out bad? And then what happened is that there was a big glut of oil and a drop in oil prices. I believe OPEC said they were going to start pumping out more oil. So oil price tanked, and their entire economy had become essentially based on the petrodollar and the oil that they were exporting. And so all of a sudden, they are broke, much like the bees, except the other way around. Like, they have this market for oil, and then the market dries up entirely. So they have this market for honey, and then because of this court ruling, the market dries up entirely because people are like, well, I can't have bee products anymore. I can't have honey anymore because the bees are going to keep it all. So they don't want to sell it anymore. So all of a sudden, and it's kind of the opposite thing, but it's for the same essential purpose, is that they're specializing in one thing, oil or honey, and then if the market dries up, things go to shit. That's just a fun little thing, except for opposite reasons. It's good times.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we did a callback earlier to our Find Me Guilty episode, and I want to do one more. And this is almost a throwaway line by Jerry Seinfeld, and he says, "What's with all these people being in this courtroom? Don't all these humans have to work?" And it reminded me of, in the Find Me Guilty, those people were in the court case for like 2 years. The jury members, the gallery, like nobody had anything productive being done. They were caught in this bureaucratic nightmare, this ceremony, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just totally correlates to what I saw in B-Movie here.
I don't disagree. Circle gets a square, buddy.
All right. Well, I think let's start winding this one down. We've been going almost 45 minutes, and I want to get any last, real cogent notes and points out while we were discussing this movie, B-Movie, on The Last Nighters, episode 19.
Yeah. What else we got? What else? What do you want to do your final analysis, or do you got some more points?
Those were all my notes, but
okay. There was one point, and I'm kind of blanking. I've got it written down here in my notes, but I'm kind of forgetting what happened. There was like a gun in the face of an old woman having tea, and then her head got slammed into the table or something like that, and it was supposed to be funny. And it was just horrifying. Do you remember that part?
Vaguely.
Okay, well, let's not talk about that. Who cares?
Yeah, so this,
anyway.
Being a kid's movie, I watched it with the kids, and when I watch anything with the kids, it's like half distraction, half watching, because the half distraction is like trying to keep them from biting or wrestling or climbing over gates or falling downstairs, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Yeah, that is good times, Daniel. I'm glad you're being a good parent and exposing them to this garbage.
Well, like I said, it does turn itself around, and I'll just go right into my final summary review here.
Do it.
You start out with this relatively socialistic society that haven't made their sentience known to the dominant species of the planet, the humans. But then once they do, they decide to sue. And like I said, I find it interesting that they would choose to do it in human court versus bee court, because they happen to have bee Larry King and bee newscasts and basically bee versions of everything. But throughout the course of the film, they realize that once they get what they want, that it's not really that good of an outcome. And so then they have to shift toward a more market-based approach, more of a providing a service and receiving a benefit in exchange. And I think that is actually a pretty good message, but it will probably be lost on most kids. But as far as like overall, I kind of think that the critics are pretty solid on this one. Like, it's not the greatest movie. It's tolerable. It's interesting. There's some buzzwords in there that I would rather they not be there. But I think that the animal rights question and the sentience question makes an interesting discussion. So for me, the overall rating is going to be a 5.2, which is fairly low, I realize. But
yeah,
I'm not going to run out and watch this one again anytime soon.
Yeah, for me, this movie was more about, like we always do on the show, is we look for the economic messages and that sort of thing, and the rights issues and sort of thing. But so for me, it was more interesting to talk about, controlled economies versus specialization, capitalism versus socialism. And I think those things are going to essentially be lost on most audiences, but you might glean, something out of them. And like you said, the message does turn itself around. I do appreciate that the main character is an individualist, almost first and foremost, for the most part, although he does, he's kind of like a social justice warrior a little bit much for that for me, but he is at least an individualist inside this collective hive commune. And, bees are essentially communists, but they are also, highly specialized market actors. So I have mixed feelings about them. But, this movie, not the greatest, like Daniel said. It wasn't particularly funny, which is essentially my yardstick for these sort of comedy-type movies. So, I mean, you put Jerry Seinfeld in the lead in a little animated movie, especially this is around the time when they were trying to compete with like Pixar, and a lot of these movies were coming out, with big name talent to try and suck in some of them dollars that people were spending to go watch these movies with their kids. And yeah, this movie just kind of fell flat, hit the middle of the road. Does have a decent message, at least a little bit, if you can discern it. If you're just watching it with your kids, kind of half paying attention, you could just fly right by you. Buzz right by you. And I want to apologize for all that talk. Anyway, this movie is about a 6. Give a flat 6.
All right, a flat 6. All right. Oh, and there is another economic thing I wanted to just mention is economic organization and activity, and that's something that F.A. Hayek was very keen on in studying. And there is a writing by Bernard Mandeville called The Fable of the Bees, and that is probably worth checking out. So I'll post a link to that down in the show notes page on this, lastnighters.com/19. And any final messages from you, Robert, before we say goodnight to our lovely audience?
Yeah, lovely audience. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for stopping in, checking us out, seeing how we're doing. Because, we're still alive, doing it up. Come on back for the next episode, which is going to be...
Deadpool. Oh, staying alive. Oh, wait, Deadpool. Not staying alive. We should do a Bee Gees movie at some point. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us for this episode of The Last Nighters, and we can say goodnight from last night.